I'm now fully convinced Star Trek IV needs to happen, but only with a major change. I'm still waiting for J.J. Abrams' Star Trek IV to happen to find out what's been happening in the Kelvin timeline since the end of 2016's Star Trek Beyond. And although I've always wanted a fourth movie from the franchise's softly rebooted reality, there's been a real-world development that has made me even more certain it should happen. Although 2009's Star Trek and the two following movies were already packed with star power, the years that have passed since the trilogy's end have resulted in them all becoming even more established actors. So Star Trek IV would be especially high-profile. There's a lot to recognize for long-standing fans in Abrams' Star Trek movies, but the Kelvin Timeline series has replaced every main actor who appeared as part of the cast of Star Trek, the original series, although Leonard Nimoy did also return as Prime Spock in the first installment. Set roughly alongside the same period as the Prime Universe's TOS era, Chris Pine's time as Captain Kirk takes his crew through a reimagined set of events that often have nods to William Shatner's original version of the character. Star Trek IV would likely continue this formula, but with a notable change. Zoe Saldana's Oscar win is further proof that Star Trek IV needs to happen. The acting talent on show in Abrams' Star Trek movies was never in doubt. I'd long been a Chris Pine fan before his 2009 franchise debut, and his interpretation of James T. Kirk was equally respectful of Shatner's efforts as it was true to Pine's own choices. Zachary Quinto's version of Spock also boasted similar qualities. Zoe Saldana was another star who shone immediately in Star Trek, replacing Nichelle Nichols as Lieutenant Nyota Uhura. Also appearing in Avatar that same year, 2009 was enormous for Saldana, but 2025 is arguably even bigger thanks to her first Oscar win. Saldana was presented with the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress due to her performance as Rita Mora Castro in 2024's Amela Perez. Saldana was presented with the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress due to her performance as Rita Mora Castro in 2024's Amela Perez. Although Saldana isn't the first Star Trek actor to win an Oscar, it puts her in an exclusive group. One of the most recent examples is Michelle Yeoh, earning the Best Actress award at the 2023 Oscars for 2022's Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. This achievement arguably went some way to Yeoh, going on to lead the cast of Star Trek, Section 31. So Star Trek IV should be Saldana's post-Oscar outing within the franchise. If Star Trek IV happens, Uhura must be as prominent as Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. The Kelvin Timeline's movies replicate Star Trek, the original series' ensemble cast approach, although more focus is put on certain characters more than others. Pine's Kirk is one of the biggest stars of the trilogy, but Quinto's Spock and Carl Urban's Dr. McCoy also receive huge amounts of attention. Zoe Saldana does get a good amount of time on screen as Uhura, but nowhere near as much as other members of the Enterprise crew. So, now armed with an Oscar win, Saldana has to be placed front and center with the other prominent characters in Star Trek IV. Uhura had some very important episodes in Star Trek, the original series and Celia Rose Gooding's younger version of the character in Star Trek. Strange New Worlds is similarly instrumental to how the story is told. So it wouldn't be anything new to give Kelvin Uhura a bigger platform than she has already enjoyed in the previous 3 films. Plus, delving further into the version of the character in the Abrams movies also keeps things interesting, while also acknowledging Saldana's Oscar win and allowing her to further display the talent that earned her the Academy Award, where Star Trek IV stands in 2025. News on another Kelvin Timeline movie set after Star Trek Beyond has been fluid and hard to parse for years now. Although there is a clear desire from those involved with the original trilogy to continue the story, it remains unclear whether Paramount has officially greenlit the project. However, Other sources state Star Trek IV is still on the cards, and that it's just stuck in production hell. The movie has had several writers and directors attached, but none have seemingly been a fit for what is being labeled by some as the series' final chapter. With almost a decade having passed since Star Trek Beyond, the writers would surely need to address the cast's new ages, which would in turn impact the plot. There have been different concepts mentioned for Star Trek IV, with some plans involving what would technically be a prequel, bringing back Chris Hemsworth's George Kirk in a time travel adventure. Unfortunately, nothing solid has yet been announced about if and when the movie will be finished or even made. Hopefully, it makes some real progress sooner rather than later. Zoe Saldana's Oscar win might make Star Trek IV even less likely. With Star Trek IV already struggling, Saldana's well-earned Oscar win may be great news for her, but it could actually hurt the chances even further of the fourth movie ever happening. She has already been in demand for years, as proven by her jump to the MCU as Gamora in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies after Star Trek Beyond. There's also the matter of her ongoing involvement in the Avatar franchise, with the fifth installment not due to land until 2031, and 2 more between now and then. So her Oscar could make her even more sought after. Because the series lives and breathes by its tributes to Star Trek, the original series, a fourth movie without Uhura just wouldn't be the same. Even if Saldana is available to reprise her Star Trek role, it could come down to her having to decide between a very appealing-sounding project and a sci-fi sequel that's arguably years past when it would have been its most successful, the latter, of course, being Star Trek IV. Because the series lives and breathes by its tributes to Star Trek, the original series, a fourth movie without Uhura just wouldn't be the same. Although recasting the character remains an option, such a decision seems likely. There's also the issue of what role Uhura would play in Star Trek IV. As mentioned, she's rarely been at the forefront of the other Kelvin timeline movies. With so many options presumably on the table in the actress' immediate future, accepting a secondary role in what is otherwise part of a massive franchise just may not be a very attractive prospect for Saldana, especially when she could be the lead in other projects. Plus, it arguably wouldn't be fair for her to remain in a supporting role for Star Trek IV after something as big as an Oscar win.